I had a lovely couple who were patients once, let's call them Mark and Vanessa, who ran into a little trouble on the communication front. Let me paint the picture for you. Imagine them seated at a dimly lit dinner table at a restaurant. As the candle flickers, so does their conversation. From misinterpreted comments about the pasta to a full-blown fight on why Mark's mom said that Vanessa's new haircut was a cry for help and she should be taking antidepressants. It's the kind of exaggerated communication mishap that, while a bit funny, hints at the everyday struggles couples face in understanding each other. In the world of romantic relationships, the art of conversation often turns into a game where words are both the pieces and the playing field. Yet, despite all the advice available from books, blogs, and therapists, couples frequently find the foundation of their communication strategies cracking under the weight of real-life emotions and misunderstandings. Why is it that the most well-intentioned advice seems to crumble when it matters the most? Hi, I'm Dr. Jon Dabach, a couples counselor and relationship coach, and I've spent years navigating these conversational mazes with couples of all stripes. Through this journey, I've uncovered some common threads that contribute to the breakdowns like the one I described where Vanessa's new haircut tiptoes around a heated conversation where divorce gets brought up at the most inopportune of times. In this video, we're going to dive into why standard communication techniques often miss the mark and explore how we can turn these misfires into opportunities for genuine connection and understanding that lead to more joy, better sex, and a solid feeling of being a team. Now, a lot of these are going to be pieces of advice you've heard before, and on their own, they might be good ideas, but it's the execution of these tools or techniques that you find couples just completely derail their progress in rebuilding their relationships. Consider the popular advice of never going to bed angry. Now, in theory, it encourages resolving conflicts quickly. In practice, it often leads to tired partners hashing out issues when they're least emotionally equipped to deal with them effectively. This well-meaning advice can turn a molehill into a mountain as fatigue fuels the fire of disagreement. If you think that bit of conflict is hard to navigate now, imagine how patient and compassionate your partner is going to be the next day when they're hanging on by a thread on only 4 hours of sleep. In my experience, going to bed angry often means waking up ready to let go. Sometimes you do need to just get some distance from a problem. Then there's the sacred active listening. If there's one tool people know before coming into therapy the most, it's this little gem right here. Active listening is meant to show attentiveness and understanding. However, when it's executed under the stress of an argument, what's meant to be active listening can come off as patronizing or worse, passive-aggressive. It's not just about hearing each other out, but doing so in a way that doesn't feel like ticking off a checklist of good spousal behavior. If you find yourself concentrating on active listening while your partner is yelling at you, something's probably going wrong and you might need to hold a boundary that the conversation has become toxic and you won't just sit there and take it. Using I statements is another cornerstone of couples therapy. Designed to express feelings without blaming your partner, these statements often backfire by coming off as scripted or insincere if it's not used thoughtfully. Instead of fostering understanding, they can make conversations feel like a scripted play devoid of real emotion. If you're the kind of person who talks in a super casual way and curses like a sailor, to look at your partner with a stiff expression and say something that doesn't sound like you isn't really going to fly. Imagine Snoop Dogg turning to his wife and instead of adding all of his colorful izzles and shizzles, he says something like, "I often feel attacked in our conversations when you rush to past mistakes I've made in our relationship." Stop trying to sound like a therapist if you don't talk that way. Make it your own. Now, if you don't know how to do that, then yes, seeking some help from your therapist might be a good idea. Each of these techniques has its place, but without the right context, trust, timing, and empathy, they can easily lead to more confusion than clarity. Let's explore some moments when these methods miss the mark and what can be done differently. Maybe you can remember a time where you and your partner were talking about weekend plans when suddenly the conversation took a hard left turn and now you're defending how you show your love and how you're just as serious about making this relationship a priority as your partner is. Talking about the weekend can sometimes uncover layers of unspoken expectations and disappointments that are bubbling just beneath the surface. These instances highlight not just a failure to communicate, but a failure to connect on a deeper level. Another favorite that we've all used at one point or another is the silent treatment. Now, obviously, this is often employed as a form of emotional distancing rather than a way to increase communication. We all have a part of us that feels like if we can just get our partner to feel the pain we're feeling, that maybe, just maybe, they'll come around to behaving differently. That's when the initial idea to just shut down and shut them out usually creeps into your head. The problem with that is that it's based in spite. And a great rule for how to screw up any communication is to base it in anger or spite. Bottom line, the silent treatment is just as much of a punishment for you in the long run as it is for your partner. It's a muzzle you've placed on yourself that prevents you from really solving any deep issues. If these kinds of discussions about how to better communication and improve your connection are things you enjoy, by the way, now would be a great time to click that like and subscribe button to make sure you don't miss more guidance on how to thrive in your own relationship. Another great example of misfired communication strategies comes from the attempts to keep the peace by avoiding touchy subjects. This strategy might dodge conflict in the short term, but at the expense of trust and happiness. That thing you wanted to bring up but are suppressing gets stuffed into a vault that gets full really fast, and when you put too much in there, it can explode in a flurry of resentment and bitterness. That's why avoidance becomes a barrier to the kind of open, honest communication that relationships need to thrive. Now, don't get me wrong, some of these missteps can be a bit funny, like when you might misinterpret a compliment as criticism because of past insecurities, and you start defending yourself when your partner says, "Hey, I meant that as a compliment." It might be embarrassing at the time, but usually those end up being fun memories where you had moments of growth. Now, these highs and lows from the trenches of everyday communication underscore the complexity of conversing within a committed relationship and the need for strategies that go beyond the conventional wisdom. To move beyond these common pitfalls, it's important to integrate more flexibility into how you communicate. Recognizing when to push a conversation forward and when to give it some space can be more beneficial than rigidly sticking to any one method. In short, the advice is to be human. Focus on empathy over procedure. Instead of mechanically applying techniques like active listening, focus on genuinely understanding your partner's emotional state. This might mean sometimes just being there rather than forcing a dialogue when none is needed. Both you and your partner should work on encouraging a culture of openness where both of you feel safe to express any of your insecurities and fears without judgment. This involves not only choosing the right words, but setting the right tone and environment for those words to be received warmly. Adopt a learner's mindset. Play the curiosity game, where you ask follow-up questions before you even begin to offer any kind of commentary, opinion, or attempt to problem solve. Be willing to adapt and try new approaches as your relationship evolves. What works during the honeymoon phase might need tweaking as your lives together become more complex and intertwined. Remember that effective communication is often about timing. Choosing the right moment to discuss important issues can make all the difference in how the message is received. One of my favorite moments where a couple broke through involves buying a Twinkie. This couple went on a trip to the grocery store together, and one of the things I'd spoken to the wife about in our sessions was to advocate for the things she wanted in life, regardless of what it meant people thought of her. In the past, however, her mother had an eating disorder and wouldn't be caught dead eating any kind of pastry, let alone buying the whole box. But in a moment of courage, she grabbed a box of Twinkies and placed it in the cart, waiting for her husband to judge her. Instead, he replied with, "Are you serious? You're going to let me buy Twinkies? I've been hiding them at work for years." She laughed at the reality of the situation, and they were so excited to drop their guards that they each had a Twinkie in the car on the way home. By recognizing the limitations of conventional advice and embracing a more tailored, empathetic approach to talking and listening, couples can enhance not only their communication, but the very fabric of their relationship. But what if you're in a situation where communication gets halted because you happen to be with a partner who just can't even bring themselves to apologize or ever admit fault? What are you supposed to do when it feels one-sided like that? That's the topic for my very next video, which you can watch now by clicking the little banner that's popped up on this video over here. If you've experienced communication struggles or have discovered strategies that worked for you, please share them in the comments below. And don't forget that sending this video to someone who needs this type of advice only takes a couple of clicks.